Hello and welcome to Kochie's Business Builders, the cash flow comeback, a very special digital masterclass to help answer your burning questions around small business cash flow. Now, Kochie's Business Builders has teamed up with American Express to bring you some of the best brains in the business right here to crack your cash flow concerns. We asked you, our audience of incredible, passionate, diverse small business owners from around the nation, to tell us what's keeping you up at night with funding your business day to day. We've narrowed your questions down to 5 prickly problems for our expert panel to unpack and help you solve over this session. Now, before we get into the nitty gritty, we have partnered with American Express on this masterclass because, like Kochie's Business Builders, they're committed to supporting Australian small businesses and helping assist their recovery during what's been a particularly challenging period of time. With government-assisted recovery schemes coming to an end, inflation, cost of living, and a volatile international market, there's a lot of uncertainty for small business owners just trying to stay in the black at the moment. It is a really uncertain period. We're setting ourselves a 110-minute challenge to nut out these 5 prickly business problems for you. 110 minutes because American Express's latest business card gives you up to 110 days to repay purchases with no set spending limit. So that's more purchasing power for you so you can grow your business. You're watching the highlights of our Brainstorm Bonanza with our Expert Brains Trust, so let's meet them. First up, we have Alexi Boyd, the Chief Executive of COSBOA, the Council of Small Business Organisations of Australia. A former fully qualified BAS agent, Alexi has more than 20 years' experience working with small and family businesses, in addition to running her own bookkeeping practice. She's a powerful advocate for small business owners around Australia. So, Alexi, welcome. Good to have you aboard. Also joining us, Barry Fletcher, the Vice President, General Manager, Asia Pacific for American Express Foreign Exchange International Payments, and he's a cross-border payments expert. He's been with the team since 2007. Barry has also been an executive sponsor of the American Express Women's Interest Network and is a diversity champion within the business. Barry, welcome to you. Good to have you aboard. And finally, Sarah Davidson, the co-founder of global health and beauty brand Matcha Maiden and the Melbourne cafe Matcha Milk Bar. You may have seen Sarah as a presenter on Channel 7's House of Wellness, heard her podcast Seize the Yay and Feast, or seen her on social media or her website Spoonful of Sarah. She's a lawyer, don't hold that against her, because she turned into a funpreneur and also a business mentor. Sarah, good to have you aboard as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
I love it. I love the Seize the A. That's fantastic.
I mean, ex-lawyer Kochie, so
ex-lawyer, yeah.
I found the A.
And you found the light to become an entrepreneur.
Seen the light.
Good on you. All right, let's dive straight into our first question from Jessica Barkas from Remove a Dent, a family-owned panel beater and paintless dent removal business in Mackay.
Hi Kochie, my name's Jessica and myself and my husband have a fairly new business called Remove a Dent, and our question today is regarding cash flow issues. So we found ourselves in a predicament where we are chasing anything from $20,000 to $50,000 in debtors at any given time. So we would like to know what's a better option. Is it to do what we're currently doing, which is using cash that we've put aside for our GST liabilities or even for our own super contributions? Or would it be better to take out a credit card and use that, perhaps a credit card that has a low to zero interest rate? Thanks.
Jessica, a fantastic question. We have all been there. Sarah, we can all relate to this, can't we? But you shouldn't be using your BAS or your superannuation money, should you?
Absolutely not, although I must admit, I have definitely been in that situation before.
Me too. Which business owner has it?
It's all part of the teething problems that get you into a healthier and a better payment cycle. You do find you've just got this amount that you're falling short of all your expenses. And I think One really good option in our experience was getting a credit card. It allowed us to buy some extra time to just catch up, because you're outlaying all this money and then you've got your payments coming in, but there's always going to be a lag. So having a credit card for us allowed us to really extend that time, and we were very organised around working out the interest-free periods, how long we could buy really to allow us to extend that payment cycle.
And I find it sort of smooths your financial life out a bit.
Absolutely.
Takes a bit of the stress out if you know you've got that safety net, doesn't it?
100%. And you're buying yourself time, and because you're not having to pay interest for that period, it's like getting an extra 50 days to catch up to yourself. It's very normal to have, especially as you're growing, that $20,000 to $50,000 gap, but you can manage it, and you can manage it until you can negotiate better terms. But the other thing I had to have a sort of long, hard talk to myself about at some point when I was in that situation is maybe it's also indicating that your COGS aren't high enough. So one option is to try and manage it out with a credit card. The other is, am I charging enough? Have I really looked at the cost of what it costs to bring my product or service to the market, and am I charging enough to cover that? So it's also it could be a reflection of something you need to fix.
That is a really good point, because we all tend to underprice ourselves, don't we, initially? This is a good wake-up call. Alexi, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, certainly benchmarking yourself against other businesses in a similar situation is always a great idea. So if you connect with other businesses in like-minded in a community, for example, find out what they're charging, what are they doing to resolve those cash flow problems as well. And if you are going to take on board something like a credit card or something that's going to resolve those problems and iron out those issues, it's really important to understand what those conditions are that you're going to be looking at. When do you start to pay interest? If it helps, put some little notes in your diary that you know when those triggers are going to happen, so you're aware of what the conditions are that you're buying into, and get some good advice. So quite often it's a good idea to talk to your trusted advisor, or even talk to your professional association and find out what it is that they suggest for people in a similar situation to you. And also have those conversations where you've got the debt, and that might be with the ATO or it might be with other government organisations, and open those doors for communication so you really know what all the options are.
Yeah, don't hide.
No, that's definitely not. And and I think that's a messaging that we're hearing quite loud and clear with the ATO at the moment, as they're resuming they're starting to claw back some of those debts. They're asking people to get engaged with them, find out what the options are, and the payment plans are often not onerous or expensive. You just got to stick to them.
I know we all live in fear of the ATO, but actually they are really helpful. I remember getting home one night, and my wife, who's a director of the family business, goes, I was speaking to this lovely lady from the ATO because of the passage. I'm going, you what? And she was so helpful. She helped us along. I said, mind telling me before you ring the ATO? But my initial reaction was just hide, whereas hers was, no, let's see what helps out there.
Exactly. There is that opportunity there, and the way that they converse and the way that they deal with small business is vastly different to the way that they used to.
Yeah. So Barry, how have you found it with American Express small business clients?
Well, it won't be surprising for the panel to hear this is one of the biggest issues that small businesses are facing. We recently commissioned some research that told us that almost half of small business owners find this the most stressful part of running their business. And even more concerningly, almost 1 in 3 really didn't know where to start in managing their cash flow cycle. So there are plenty of tools to think about. A couple of considerations. Sarah mentioned using a credit card. There is a difference between business cards. Some are credit cards where you do have the opportunity to roll forward a balance, but you have to pay interest on that. Then there are others that are charge cards where you might have a larger limit to spend, but you have to pay off that balance every statement period. So you really need to decide what's best for you, get some advice, as Alexi mentioned, that's important. We really try and listen to small business as much as we can, and so the recent product that we have launched actually extends cash flow benefit for customers up to 110 days. We feel that extension will give people a little bit more time to manage their cash flow, balance the books, smooth out payments, as you mentioned, David, so that they can have full control over what they need to pay.
Yeah, it's like a dip in, dip out line of credit, isn't it? Which
Exactly.
is just so useful because we all have wonky payment systems, and you only need one client to hold back or say, oh, we didn't get your invoice. Yeah, send it again, and the process starts. to really put you under a lot of financial pressure and emotional pressure as a business owner.
Well, exactly. The survey told us that many small businesses are losing sleep over this issue. So it's not just a business issue, it's actually a health issue.
Yep, absolutely. And I always thought it was just me and my business, and I was a lousy business owner, until I read Phil Knight's biography from Shoe Dog, the founder of Nike.
Yep.
That entire book is about his cash flow problems until he floated for $4 billion or something on the share market. I thought,
Well, there's a solution.
That'll fix it.
yeah. I thought, thank goodness. He even went through cash flow problems. So don't feel out there, or don't feel as though you're a poor business because you have cash flow problems. That happens to everyone, doesn't it?
I would say that one of the things that helped a lot of small businesses out there is to, I think, mentally think about that GST component, that superannuation component, the pay-as-you-go withholding tax, to think of that as not your money, and almost to put it aside as into a separate account altogether, and really limit the amount that you can touch that. And that's really difficult as we go through the highs and lows of business. But, Sarah, you mentioned about that ability to negotiate. Well, I think that small businesses can also do a really good job of sticking up for themselves with those payment times as well, and really saying, look, it's not acceptable that you're saying end of the month plus 30 days when I've got to immediately outlay all of those costs, and really be upfront and try and negotiate those as much as possible.
That's a really good point. Like Sarah's focus on your pricing, that's a really good first step. But the other one is your payment terms. And I remember the best advice I ever got was from someone who collected debts that said, as soon as you do a deal with a customer, you go, and you put the quote in, you say, I'm going to ensure you get the best service and product that I can possibly give you. But in return, I need you to respect me, that I have a business here and staff putting all this together for you. So you have to guarantee you're going to pay me on time. And so you do it right up front, not when they're late, and chase it down.
Can I add, Kochie, we've been talking about managing cash flow. I think it's something that often when you're in one of those situations where you're sort of finding you're in debt and not covering your costs and your taxes, that it can feel very much like you're a passenger, in this process, and you're helpless against the forces to fix it. But I find calling it managing your cash flow, it reminds me that I've got to be active in this. Like, you might be paying your debts too early. If you've got 30 days and you pay out a huge amount of money 30 days too early, you've actually got a whole, if you get really organized with your calendar reminders and spreadsheet the dates that you have, you could actually be not realizing how much control you have over managing the jigsaw. I call it a jigsaw puzzle. There's a lot of dates, it's very overwhelming, but you don't have to pay things out straight away. You can negotiate better terms. You're not totally helpless against the system. There are lots of ways you can actively manage your cash flow scenario to make it less stressful for yourself. But you just have to be organised.
Great point, Sarah.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Now, we should say that we're giving you a consensus of opinion here. We're not offering specific financial advice. I'm just talking about my experiences. Alexi is an expert. Barry's an expert here, but don't forget, you've got your accountants, you've got your professional bodies, Alexi, as you pointed out earlier, chambers of commerce, your bookkeepers, your accountants. Really, you need to tap into them to find out the best way to solve a lot of your issues as well. But hopefully, our experience can point you in the right direction to get that advice. All right, let's go to our next question. This is from Emma Fabro from Fusion Accountants in Adelaide.
As the owner of a small accounting firm, my biggest money challenge is helping my small business clients to solve their unique challenges. I feel the weight of my clients' various cash flow problems on my own shoulders, and many of them keep me awake at night. As an accountant and trusted advisor to my clients, how do I best support them to navigate what continues to be a difficult time?
Emma, thank you for that. Even accountants and bookkeepers need money help, don't they, Alexi?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that one of the things about being an advisor is you do take on a lot of that burden and that mental health concerns that you have for your clients, because you go with the ups and downs with them, and you feel their pains, and you feel their successes and the failures as well. And so it is difficult to put a boundary between when you're working and when you're not. And that's particular for small businesses, if you've got small business clients, because that's when they do their admin. They pick up the phone and they ask you questions when they're in the middle of doing payroll on a Thursday night at 10 o'clock, you know, after the kids have gone to bed. And unfortunately, that's probably when they're reaching out. So I would say, look after yourself. There's some excellent support services with New Access at Beyond Blue, for example. Actually make sure that you're reaching out and getting support from your colleagues in the same space as you, from your professional association as well, and make sure that you're putting boundaries in place, because too often you can start a bit of a steamroll where you start answering questions on weekends, and hey, you suddenly become available on weekends.
You are your business's biggest asset, aren't you? Yes, your clients are important. Yes, your staff are important, having a good team, that everyone says, what's the secret to your success? But you, the business owner, if you're burnt out, you're going to be grumpy, you're not going to be dynamic. You've got to look after yourself, don't you?
Exactly. And part of that understanding and building those relationships is really important if you're somebody who's providing services to your clients. Yep. But at the same time, if you're no use to anyone, then your business can go downhill as well. So the first point is make sure you're looking after yourself. Another one is keep abreast of all of the changes that are happening. And I think in the accounting space in particular, there's a lot of changes that go on. And because we're involved in payroll and we're involved in super and GST and reporting and even day-to-day operations for our businesses, we often become the go-to for asking for advice. And so either specialise in a particular area so you can offer that advice to your clients, or reach out to the community and ask other people who are in a similar situation if they've been asked the same question. Right. But don't be tempted to answer the question straight away. So I'll say, look, I don't know the answer to that, so I'm going to get back to you, or I might try and find some advice that helps you. Or if you can't answer it, say, look, have you gone to your professional association and asked them for the advice? Because it might be out of the scope of work that you do. And that's another thing you don't want to see happen, is you start bracket creeping into other offerings that you don't normally offer. And hey, all of a sudden you're doing more work than you'd already intended for that client. But it is, I think it's an advisor burden. It's something certainly that throughout COVID, a lot of advisors really wore the ups and the downs of COVID with their clients, and it was very, very stressful, not to mention the extra responsibility with JobKeeper, etc.
There are so many stresses at the moment. It is government reducing support networks that we had during COVID, so we've all got to wean off of that. There's inflation. Inflation hasn't been around for 20 years. All of a sudden we have a new breed of business owner that's going, what is this rapidly rising costs here? And we have customers who aren't used to rapidly rising prices to pay them. Not like back in, sorry Sarah, I'm old enough to be back in the 70s, 80s and 90s where it was easy to whack on 10% and the customer would go, oh, that's inflation. It's different now, isn't it?
That's right. And at the Council of Small Business Organisations, what we try and do is work out ways that we can make regulation easier for small business, constantly putting small business owners at the front mind of politicians when they're making those decisions, and saying, hey, what's going to end up happening is that small business owner is going to spend more hours after hours working on their business, and instead of working in their business, I should say, instead of working on it and looking at the future. So think about your regulations and the impact it's going to have on that small business owner themselves.
And when you get a bureaucrat saying, I just want to ask one extra question, understand, well, all your colleagues are asking 100 others, we don't want an extra one. But Sarah, how do you cope with these uncertain times? Because there is a lot of uncertainty around, and it's a whole new economic and business environment.
I think just in terms of managing the uncertainty from an announcement policy, getting answers about JobKeeper and all that kind of thing, in terms of managing the relationship with my accountant and bookkeepers and advisors, I try and be the best client I can be, because like any relationship, you get the best out of someone when you're respecting that they have boundaries, and you don't want to be emailing them at midnight, because I wouldn't want the same in the reverse direction. So one of the big things that has been a game changer during this time of uncertainty has been doing as much research as I can first before I ask a silly question. Try and do your research and have very specific questions when you go to someone, because their resources are limited, and if you respect them that way, I think they'll give you a lot more time when you do have a time of need and you have no idea what's going on.
So be organised as a client.
Be organised as a client. Do as much, like knock off the questions you could figure out by yourself, before wasting their time and save their knowledge and brains for the really hard questions. That has been a game changer because I get so much more out of my accountant once I stopped crying. We made a lot of progress. But in terms of uncertainty in general, I mean, it's a really difficult time for business owners, but everyone alike. There is so much change. It's not the human default to enjoy change and this level of discomfort. But I think it's a mindset thing. I've really had to come back to that quote, when nothing is certain, anything is possible. Uncertainty is also a time of great opportunity. It's painful, it's emotional, it's challenging, it's difficult, it's very, very hard. There's so much stuff that comes along with that. But I also think, when else do you get to clean the slate? Business owners don't have time to reevaluate fundamentally what they're doing, what directions they want, what's working, what isn't working. You can only really focus on the silver lining of the opportunities ahead of you. And I've gone from being, as a lawyer, I was a 50-year plan kind of person. My first few years in business brought me back to maybe a 5-year plan. Now it's a 5-month, 5-week, 5-minute plan, and that's liberating. It's scary, but it's so exciting because businesses are more agile than they've ever been. The partnerships that can come out of these times, the relationships you can get out of times of uncertainty, it's exciting. Scary, but exciting.
Barry, you see so many small business owners at American Express. Are there any common themes that you've noticed from successful ones on how they're dealing with these uncertain times?
Sure. The interesting thing about small business, David, is the small business owner is often everything from the CEO to the cleaner. They're trying to do so many things in between, which means time management is often a real challenge for them. Alexia and I were talking about this a little earlier. So build a team around you, similar to what Sarah was saying, what Alexia was saying. There is so much information available now on how to manage a business, how to manage your cash flow. So as much as there is a lot of uncertainty at the moment, you mentioned a couple of issues folks are dealing with, David, but there's also staff challenges. Everyone's struggling to get staff at the moment. So there's a lot going on that small business is trying to deal with. But one of the things that came out of our research that I was most impressed with, despite all of this, almost 3/4 of the small business owners we surveyed feel optimistic about their future. So they feel good. They know that they've gone through 2.5 years that will be probably the most profound in their whole working life, and they can see what's ahead.
We are all supreme optimists. Otherwise we wouldn't have gone into business for ourselves. Some would say we're suckers, but we are all supreme optimists. All right, let's go to our next question now, and it comes from Instagram specialist Brooke Villanovich from Social Club based in Perth.
Hi Kochie, Brooke here from the Social Club. A few weeks ago, for the first time in 6 years, I found myself in a position where the business felt like it was making money, all my bills were paid. However, somehow I didn't have enough to cover my own wages and my staff wages, and I actually had to stop paying myself for 2 weeks and also put money, my personal money, into the business for the first time ever in order to just do payroll. How can I avoid this from happening?
Brooke, we feel your pain, and we've all felt your pain as well because we've been through the same thing. Sarah, we could all relate to this, can't we?
I felt that pain for longer than I care to admit. That situation was, I would say, the first 5 years of our business. You definitely do need to account for, you have to get something out of it, and eventually the goal is to be able to pay yourself a full wage, but sometimes that's just what it takes to get the business to a certain level. So, don't be too hard on yourself is the first point. In my experience, there are times where you just can't pay yourself, and you do put a bit of money back in, but Emma,
it's happened to all of us.
Oh, all of us, absolutely.
So don't think it's anything bad for you.
No,
We've just got to cope.
And that is the ultimate goal, to get a full wage out of it, but I definitely didn't take that for many years. And there are other ways you can get benefits out of the business. It doesn't have to be necessarily as a wage in the beginning. In fact, for the first 5 years, I was like, what even is a wage? I don't even know what that is. But I'll come back to what I said before, just that if you are finding that you've got a shortfall and it's a regular shortfall of a similar amount, in my experience, it can be helpful to look at the dates that you have. Are you paying your expenses too quickly? If you've got longer, can you reorganize your cash flow a little bit so that you can maybe take a little bit more out for yourself than you might otherwise be able to? Speak to your advisors, of course, that's always the advice. They may be able to look at your books and help reorganise things a bit more, so that even if it's not a full wage, you could start taking out a little bit more out of your business. But really on that point in particular, don't be too hard on yourself. It's extremely common. The business will suck everything out of you in the first few years, and you will get to a point where it changes.
Yeah, and build a buffer when you can.
Yes, absolutely. There are times where even once I did start taking a wage, some months would be excellent, and then ebbs and flow of the market, some months would be really hard and I'd be back in that same situation. So I like to have a rainy day fund where I would put, when I had, more than I thought, instead of kind of spending that, I'd put it away and just think there'll be a month where I can't pay everything on what I've made that month alone, but I'll have this money set aside, and ask your advisor what the right amount could be. But just to...
What benchmark did you use?
I used, I think it was 3 months of my bare minimum expenses, like paying employees, all the payroll expenses,
rent,
all the
that sort of
overheads.
stuff.
When you're going really well and you can afford, put it aside, because there'll be a month where you need it, and business every month is not going to be the same. It's always going to be a roller coaster. So use the good times to cover you for the bad.
Yep. Alexi?
Yeah, and especially just carrying on what you're saying there, Sarah, is understand the seasonality of your businesses. So it depends on location, it depends on your
That's a really good point.
yeah, and understand what your income ebbs and flows are, and where your expenses ebbs and flows are as well. So you know when that rainy day is going to happen. It might be December, it might be January after the school holiday. So it sort of depends on the business that you're in. Again, get that advice from a professional association. They may be able to guide you in the right direction. But when it comes to payroll, I think it depends on what structure. So if you're an employee of your business, you actually have obligations to yourself as an employee. So it's very important that you understand that you're not missing those deadlines, you're not missing super for yourself, and that you know what it is that is your requirement. So get some really good advice here, so you know where it is.
That is really important, because we tend to think, as a business owner, I will pay everyone first, and don't worry about us for 3 months. But under the law, you do have to worry about you.
And you have to worry about your super. You have to treat yourself as an employee as you would any of the other employees. So understand what those obligations are. Check with your accountant about what you must do as opposed to what you can maybe create a buffer for. But advice in this situation is really important, because as a different entity to the business, then you have to think of that differently. And it depends on your structure. So really to understand what your requirements are and get that proper advice is really important.
That is incredibly important. Barry?
Yeah, I'll just maybe pick up on that last theme about self-care, if you like. Small businesses make a lot of sacrifices. Small business owners make a lot of sacrifice to run their business. One of the benefits we see when we talk to small businesses is where they're accessing membership rewards programs and loyalty programs, they can actually reinvest those points for themselves. So many of our small business owners only get an annual holiday because of the points they earn using certain products. It's a great way to treat yourself. Sarah and I were talking about the value of points a little earlier. So yeah, it's one small thing a business can do if they're managing their cash flow, using those products and earning membership rewards points on the back of it. That's an investment they can make in themselves down the track.
Yeah, that is a really, really good point. So Emma, all the very best with it, and some great advice, particularly from Sarah. As soon as you, and Alexi, if you've got seasonality in your business, the good times, don't go and blow it, build your rainy day fund. Now we have a bit of a different question from Ethan Didascalu from Melbourne-based luggage brand July.
G'day, this is Ethan Didascalu, co-founder of July Luggage here. Kochie, I've got a question for you. As more people go online and start trading internationally, foreign exchange becomes a bigger issue. Managing accounts, managing money, what are your tips for being able to transact effectively and efficiently online when dealing with foreign exchange?
Ethan, great question. Let me tell you, I do love your luggage, your carry-on. Sarah and I, when we read your name on the question, went, oh, we love this bloke and his luggage.
You've got some super fans over here,
Oh,
Ethan.
yeah, and some great products. Barry, this is in your wheelhouse, that's for sure. Because with Ethan and not just July, but so many Australian businesses using e-commerce online, you're building global customers. And that brings another layer, doesn't it, in terms of managing currency?
Another layer of complexity.
Yes.
Can I say as an aside, Alexia and I are going to Google this as soon as we get out because we haven't heard of the luggage. So.
Well, if you're on Instagram, Ethan does great marketing on social media as well. That got me hooked.
Okay, we'll jump onto that. And look, this is not a surprising question. We hear this a lot from small business owners, particularly those that are engaging with foreign exchange and international payments for the first time.
Yep.
Because honestly, foreign exchange is the largest financial services market in the world. Like it's big and it can be very complex for small business owners to get involved with. When we talk to them, they're struggling with things like rising transport costs and trying to get deliveries on time. I mean, so much of what's happened through COVID has impacted international trade. But the one thing that comes up most regularly is volatility of the currency. This year in particular, so if you jump back to April this year, one Australian dollar was buying 76 US cents. So that was about an average range. Jump forward to September, it was buying 63 US cents. So that 13 cents differential can have a massive impact on customers.
Can be your margin.
Can be all of your margin.
Yep.
Now the good thing is many small businesses are becoming more savvy and more product focused. A third that we spoke to are looking to hedge their foreign currency expectations. So using a product like a forward exchange product where you can lock in an exchange rate for a period of time against a parcel of funds. So that gives you certainty over that exchange for that period. So we've got more and more small businesses that are interested to talk to us about that. But certainly as we're guiding customers through some of these challenges, we want them to think about all of their payments, not just their foreign exchange, but also their domestic payments. So there are options out there now where they can pay virtually any supplier anywhere in the world. Whether they accept card payments or not, we have a mechanism for them to do that. And they can earn membership rewards on the back of that, similar to the conversation we were having earlier about reinvesting that for your business. So there's lots of options out there for them to think about.
A couple of questions business owners naturally have is how do you get the best rate?
Yes.
And also security of transaction.
So on the competitive rates, every provider will be very transparent in the rates that they are offering. So partner with someone that you can trust. You want to make sure that you've got a good relationship with whomever your FX provider is. And if that relationship is built on trust, then they're likely to want to look after you from a competitive rates perspective. And that feeds into the second point, where's that transaction going? So again, if you are transacting with a reputable supplier, they will do necessary background checks to make sure that payment is going to get to where you want it to go.
Okay. Now, I know I keep picking your brains on good clients, but
Yes.
but give me a good case study that you work with, a business that is in this position, and why do they do it so well?
Yeah, I'll give you two different scenarios because we have customers that apply different hedging strategies. So we have some that as soon as they lock in a new contract, with a new customer, they will hedge the currency that's built into that contract immediately, and they build that price into the contract. So the currency can go up, down, it doesn't matter because they have certainty into their price.
They know their margin, they know their cost of goods sold, all of that.
It's all built in. For other customers where they don't have that certainty of amount that they need to pay over a period of time, they may choose to hedge half of what they think their exposure is, so they're somewhat protected from volatility. And then if the currency improves, they've still got some scope to be able to access that better rate.
Kochie, wouldn't it be amazing if we could get all business owners to be able to set in stone what that income's going to be? I mean, if we look at whole industries at the moment, entire industries that are just being wiped clean because they've got these locked-in contracts where they've got income coming in, but the fluctuations that are happening with their costs are crazy, and so they're having all of their profit wiped out. In certain industries, you think about the building industry, etc. So, wouldn't it be great if they could lock in all their costs and lock in all of those pricing to make sure that they knew exactly what they were going to make on each job? Not realistic in necessarily a lot of different scenarios, but it's a great opportunity to sort of hedge that and at least understand with that cost for doing business internationally, then that's something that's locked in.
Exactly.
And you want, Sarah, you want to de-risk as much of your business as possible, isn't it? It's a risk mitigation issue more than anything else.
And it's interesting, again, using the word mitigation, it's reminding you that you do have control to change a lot. Like I used to think whenever anyone would start talking about foreign exchange, I'd think we're too small for that. Like you just sort of think it doesn't apply to you, where our stock purchases are so small compared to these big corporations. But I didn't realize how much we were losing because we originally, like a lot of our business was with a tea farm in Japan in US dollars, but I just thought we were too small for that. Whereas if you don't ask, it's a no. I just asked, can we start paying via a different method? And that method will involve using a foreign exchange payment system that I could hedge the currency. I could, when the dollar was really good, I could lock in, I could, pre-buy $5,000 US and just wait, knowing I would need to use it at some point. Yep. I had counted myself out of that equation completely, thinking we were too small, but there's always something you can do to reorganize the way that you pay to de-risk. You don't have to just be like, yep. I think we accept what bigger suppliers or bigger people we're in partnership with impose on us because we think we have no control, but you can always ask the question.
Yep.
That's why this is such a good question, isn't it? Because I think that increasingly in this global world where we're trading globally, and this isn't just about goods that are being imported and exported, but actually services. A lot of people are now offering their services internationally. How does the foreign exchange affect you and how are you accepting payments? And it's something definitely that needs to be considered increasingly.
It's wild out there in terms of currency markets at the moment. Get it wrong and it can cause huge damage to your business.
No, exactly right, Dave. And as you said earlier, trying to mitigate against all kinds of risk for a small business owner has to be the key, and this is one of the key areas.
Have you ever seen currency markets more volatile than this?
GFC was close, but
this
last probably year to 2 years has been something else.
Yeah. Is anything stable?
Well, I mean, I'm not. I can say
that. Inflation, worker shortages, migration. It's all just
I know.
No principles.
On our toes.
Alexi, look, we don't want to go there, thanks for it. We don't want to be reminded of that. Now we have time for one more question. This comes from Adam Bainbridge at Grow Lawn Care in Sydney. So Adam's question is, I have ever-increasing demand, so I'm constantly expanding my business. Great news, Adam. This means I often have to manage bigger than usual capital purchases for the likes of advertising and product development. How do I plan and save for these purchases well in advance so I always feel ahead? This is a biggie, Sarah, isn't it? How do you manage that? Because, you're confident in your business, but to really grow it in the future, you may have to put the investment in early on before you start getting a return on it.
Absolutely. I mean, hearing that phrase, how do I feel ahead? I don't actually think I felt ahead very often in our business, but that is one of the hardest parts of any kind of exponential growth. It's exciting, it's amazing, it's exactly what you want, but it does mean that each time you're reordering, if it's stock in this situation, it would be, big outlays on stock. They're going to get bigger every time, but that's often before the corresponding payments for those things are catching up to you. So you're probably going to have to get comfortable with not necessarily feeling ahead. You might not have your payment cycles catching up to you on time for the next big outlay. That's the most uncomfortable part of growth, but it's a good sign if those expenses are getting bigger. I would say this is just when everything we've talked about in terms of getting really organised about your payment terms, how long you have to pay things, the latest date that you can pay things without incurring interest. Organisation around any kind of money movement or cash flow in your business is more crucial in this kind of growth than it is at any other time. And this is when I would say, Go to an advisor about the different options you have to increase the time you have to catch up to yourself so that you don't always feel like you're falling so far behind. Maybe if you haven't used a credit card or tried to look into unsecured loans or all the other options that there are, this is when you could ask an advisor about something like that if you haven't already done so, because you will feel like you're not getting ahead, but actually in the broad scheme of things you are.
Yeah. Alexi, because it could be, for Adam, it is product development and advertising and marketing, but it could be tech that you need to invest in, and you can get lots of financing terms for different products, can't you?
You can.
Ask your advisor, as Sarah would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And be really, really clear about what those terms are. So sometimes in the thick of it and you're doing things quickly because you've got this big order coming in, I've quickly got to make this order, I'm going to have to outlay something in advance, so there's a bit of a cash flow issue there. We can make decisions quite quickly. So it's important that you understand if you're taking on board a new type of loan or there's going to be costs involved, what are those costs? diarise when those repayments are required, how much is it going to cost me in the long term, in the short term. So really understanding what the cost of that outlay might be, and then looking at the seasonality in your business. So if you've got this sudden capital purchase that you need to make, are there other things that go along with that, like the advertising, like the marketing, like the people that you're going to need to lay that turf, for example. So understand holistically what that cost investment is going to be, not just the outlay of the capital itself, but all the other bits that go with it.
And you could look at invoice financing. As Sarah was saying, get the right advice, because there are lots of options, aren't there?
Indeed, yeah.
Barry?
Yeah, I just concur with both Alexi and Sarah. Business loans tend to be something our customers consider when they're in this kind of situation. It's great for Adam. His business is obviously doing well, so he's ready to invest. Most business loans cover terms from 6 to 36 months, so it gives you some options around how far out you want to extend that. So if it's just for advertising, it might be a shorter term. You can pay it off a bit quicker. If it's a longer term, like capital expenditure, might be a new piece of machinery or some vehicles or whatever it is, maybe extend it to a longer term, so you've got more time for that to pay back to your business. But there's quite a number of options out there, but as always, talk to an expert, get some advice.
And there's some different experts you can get through you. So you may be talking to your accountant, your bookkeeper quite regularly, but what about a commercial asset finance broker, for example? Get the right advice from the right people. And often the advisors that you have, your trusted advisors, they will have their own network of trusted advisors. So ask them for support.
But just coming back to the emotional side of this as a business owner as well, I think you can really beat yourself up when you aren't feeling like you're ahead all the time. But I would also say, have a look at what your metrics for success are. I think there's a lot of pressure on a business owner to become profitable straight away. Right. And in so many business models, that's just not in the extreme growth phase of going viral, or, you know, this exponential growth curve that you have. Like Twitter wasn't profitable until it was $1 billion company. And that maybe just isn't the model. That you're not going to become that in your first year or your second year or your first 6 months. It's different for everyone. But I think take the pressure off yourself needing to feel like you're in the black, you're profitable straight away, because there are growth phases in your business chapter, there are comfort phases, there are survival phases. We will go through, coming back to seasonality, it's not just within 1 year's cycle, it's over the course of however long you're going to be in business. So in an extreme growth phase, you might not be as profitable as you are when you're in a coasting phase, you know. Be gentle with yourself as you navigate those different chapters.
And you saying that reminds me that get involved in a network somewhere. A business network. There are so many founder networks, Sarah, out there, aren't there, that, you know, you mix with people going through exactly the same thing as you, and you swap advice, you tell war stories, but more importantly, emotionally, it gives you some comfort to know there are other people out there doing it tough like you are, and having to build it.
It is. Our business babies.
Yeah,
it's like, how are they going?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or I'm having a tough day, or, you know, it's not sleeping very well.
That's a great
Mine's
comparison.
very advanced.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. So take it. They're out there everywhere, aren't they? So
ask for help. Ask for help. And I think that I don't think in anyone's growth, anyone's business journey where you have asked for help that anybody has said no. No. People will offer you advice. If you say to someone, "Can I buy you a cup of coffee? I really need your help with this." It would be a hard taskmaster who says no to that.
I reckon no one would ever do it, because everyone's been through exactly the same thing.
Absolutely.
And they know what it's like.
You don't have colleagues in business the same way, especially if you're the founder or the CEO. You don't have colleagues the same way you do when you're in a corporation. So you have to create that for yourself. You have to create a group of peers, like same with children. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise a business. No one is expected to do it alone, even though the story is often told from an individualistic perspective. There's no founder or anyone in business who has ever done it without an army of people in the background.
Difference with business owners is when things are tough, you've still got to be positive. And you can't be sharing those tough times with staff, because you don't want to lose their customer. With customers, you don't want to share it with them. You've got to bottle it up, and you carry it on your shoulders. We've all known this. So if you talk to other business owners, they bottled it up at the same time. And you can talk to somebody who knows exactly what you're going through.
Or get some professional help from the great people at Beyond Blue as well.
Yes. Oh, totally agree. They do a great job. And don't underestimate the emotional toll it takes on you. They actually explain exercises for you to do to keep in shape emotionally and mentally. They're really good. That's a great point, Alexi. Well, I'll tell you what, I've solved a lot of problems in my business from this masterclass. Hopefully we've helped yours as well, because it brings us to an end of our Kochie's Business Builders special digital masterclass, the cash flow comeback, in partnership with American Express. We could go on well past 110 minutes with these brilliant brains in this room, but we managed to come up with a number of solutions for the cash flow concerns keeping you up at night. A very big thank you to Sarah Davidson, Alexi Boyd and Barry Fletcher for their insights and time. I have loved picking your brains, let me tell you, it's been terrific. So thank you so much again. Please sign up for our KBB newsletter at kochiesbiz.com.au, and also head to amex.com.au to find out more about their 110-day cash flow days charge card, the American Express business card. If you want us to do more of these masterclasses or have an idea for a session you'd like us to do, drop it in an email to us, kochiesbiz@pinstripemedia.com.au. Thanks for joining us. Good luck with your business. Hope you have a terrific 12 months ahead.